Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. This is the video version or video companion of what we'll talk about in the library on Tuesday, December 7th. I hope all are doing very well. Hopefully we get to see each other in person, of course. That's always much better. Today, we're going to talk about formative assessments. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so yes, we are talking about what we're going to also be putting in Atlas. So if we're going to talk about Atlas, let me have a little bit of a conversation about the context. Context is always important. So if you're wondering, if you're stressed out, or if it ever bothers you, why do we put things in Atlas? I want to be clear about this. We always have to lead with purpose. So on the Curriculum Office Google site, you'll see here there's an arrow. There's an Atlas purpose statement. You're welcome to click on it, open it up, read it, book an appointment with me. I'll visit you and you can tell me what you think about Atlas and we can talk about it. I really think it's always good to have our purpose clear before we do anything. So why do we do Atlas? Again, we want to have a documented curriculum. So we have something written that we can guarantee for the students each year. So it doesn't change every year, every time we have a new teacher. We also want to have a documented curriculum so we know what we can support and help you and make it more viable. If it's not written down, we don't know what to support. We also want to have a documented curriculum because we want to be a leading school. We don't want to rely just on the sheer luck of awesome teachers, which, yeah, we're lucky, we do have, but it shouldn't be a dice roll in that way. And so leading schools do great hiring, but they also have the documented curriculum as well. And those are some of the reasons why we do document our curriculum. So again, if you want to talk more about it, I'd be happy to talk to you privately about it. And you can tell me everything you think, and I'll tell you what I think. And maybe we can come to a good understanding of why we do what we do. Why are we doing what we're doing this year, Paul? Here on the Curriculum Office Google site, the second arrow, I'm pointing out, this is where our Atlas strategic plan is located. And I'll click on it and we'll go to that slide next. But before we open that, I just want to show you this FAQ at the bottom. Yeah. Whenever we're talking about Atlas, we're talking about documenting unit plans for when we are live, when we are in person with our students, because we are knocking on wood. We're assuming this online learning would not be forever. And so if we're documenting our curriculum to be something good for student learning and for new teachers, it would always be in person then, okay? Okay, so if I click on the Atlas strategic plan, it will look like this. And you can see it starts way back in 2016 and goes all the way to 2024. It's a multi-year plan. I like to point this out. Atlas began at AISJ in 2013. And here we are in 2021-22, and it's still not done. But we're going to get it done. But I like to point that out because I think it's fair to say to the teachers in the room today, to the teachers who've been at the school for the strategic plan, that you are indeed doing the lion's share of the work. You are, to borrow a phrase, that great generation, that you're doing it. And you deserve a pat on the back and you deserve credit and acknowledgement for the efforts you're putting into it that the people before you and after you didn't or won't. And so I thank you for that, and I appreciate that. And again, hats off to you. You deserve that credit. Okay. I like this quote too. I put it here because we're talking about strategic planning. As Mark Twain says, continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. Yeah, I think that's really true. And we just got to keep going. And yeah, sometimes it seems like it's one step at a time and I just want to do it all right now, or I don't want to do anything right now. And kind of the happy middle ground is we have to think about what we can do each school year that will help get us to the end goal, but also not interfere too much as well. Again, there's the happy middle ground. Okay, so what are we doing this school year? 21-22, we're going to work on stage 2 summative assessments. That's not today. Today's formative assessments. We're going to work on stage 3 formative assessments. That's today. We're going to work on practice agreements. We're going to work on differentiation. And under here, it says we're going to work on Samar. And Nancy visited you already. And so this is what we're going to work on this school year, all the way to 2024. And then we'll be done. What does done mean, Paul? Done means that you get to the point in your Atlas completion that you're only making adjustments per the curriculum review cycle. You get enough done in your Atlas that it's useful for new teachers. You get enough done in your Atlas that you're only making adjustments per reflections and adding notes. But mostly it's just per the review cycle after that. That's a great stage we want to get to, and we'll get to that by 2024. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so here on the Curriculum Office Google site, you see I've moved my arrow down to the third thing, and it says Atlas Expectations for 21-22. I'll talk about this today, the formative assessment part of it, but everyone, you're encouraged to click on it, read about it, ask me questions. What does this mean? Everything is outlined here, what you need in your Atlas by the end of the school year. Okay, so if you click on it, it's going to open up and it's going to look like this. And it's going to say stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And this is just the stage 3 blown up a little bit. And in every place is going to have something highlighted in yellow. And those yellow highlights are what's due this school year. Those yellow highlights match what's shown in that strategic plan for this school year that we just looked at. Those yellow highlights also match the Tuesdays that I'll be booked for, or Nancy, for example, to talk to you about each of those categories. And so, again, check this out. Be crystal clear about what's due in Atlas this school year. You or your grade level leader or your specials, upper or lower elementary leader, please ask me clarifying questions, because we really don't want to wait to the last minute on it. But again, today we're talking about formative assessments. And so you'll see it says highlighted in yellow here, in stage 3, we will in every unit upload or share drive link formative assessments. Remember, this is the Google shared drive link. It is not the My Drive and then I've shared a file. This used to be called Team Drive. So if you're not on the shared drive, school-owned, IT-owned shared drive, then talk to Nancy about making sure that's what you're using. It says we will use the file name, the type of the assessment, the ballpark week of the assessment, and the title of the assessment. For example, formal formative assessment, week 5, fractions, multiplications, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to now explain this in much greater detail, but again, check out this doc for all your expectations for the school year. Okay, just let me get into the context a little bit more, because we're going to talk about formative assessments. So we're going to look at formative assessments per the AISJ definition for formative assessments. You might be new to AISJ and no one's told you, I haven't told you yet, that there is an assessment definition. So here's your history lesson. Here's your context piece. 2019, 2020. Wow, that was 2 years ago. Hard to believe that was 2 years ago. Pre-pandemic, at least part of the year, we were meeting in the library and we were going through this inquiry process of let's draft an assessment definition. You know, what is good assessment? Summative, formative. What should those definitions be? And we met, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And we drafted, we sent it to the principals for revision, came back, looked at it, gave some feedback, revised again, looked at it again, back and forth a couple times. And in the end, we did get to a definition. And I think it was an important process. It's one of those things, if one walks in the door and says, "Hi, here's the definition," people want to say, you know, why didn't you ask me? Of course, when you're being asked, sometimes people feel like, well, why don't you just tell me instead of spending my time asking me? So I think we did what we needed to do in terms of getting important input from the faculty. And so that was the process we took to get to the definitions that we'll talk about today in this school year for formative and summative assessments. I think I really enjoyed this process. New teachers, you weren't here, but what we did was as we were talking about the assessment definition, we had this video booth and we kind of took video clips of people talking about what they think good assessment is. And the whole vision was we would get to an endpoint and celebrate at the end of the school year the progress we made in our new definition. And we'd have kind of a video archive of the process. And it would be a great reflection piece and celebration piece. The background you can see in the pictures, you may recall, was likening the inquiry process to kind of like a journey to grandma's house. You know, you leave the city, you're all bright and cheery, and night comes, and so you turn on the headlights of your car. But when you're out in the countryside, there are fewer street lights, but your headlights take care of you. But they can only go so far. But that's okay. You still keep going. You trust that there's still a road ahead. You trust that there's a destination and you're still going to get there. And that's kind of like the inquiry process for coming up with an assessment definition. We could only see so far ahead. We didn't plot and plan and connive to get to this definition that we really wanted. It was an inquiry process, and we got ideas from people, and we just let the process take over. And so we did get there, and I enjoyed that process. But you'll see what happened. It's interesting. You can even see in the quality of the pictures. We started all cheery. Everyone was in a great mood. Things were going okay. At least I thought so. But then you can see things start getting darker, tougher. And by the end here, you can see people are in their apartments or in Saudi City. And what happened was COVID hit. You know, I think it was in March that the school went online. People had to stay home. For new teachers who weren't here, we actually had lockdown where we were supposed to stay in our homes and had to use our app with permits to go outside. And it was kind of serious there for a while. It was tough. And so this whole process really hit, as Sophie says, road bump. And it was really tough. And this process took a back seat, and it really didn't turn out the way we had it hoped. A lot of things didn't turn out the way we hoped. And a couple folks voluntary helped continue the process, and we did get to a final solution, final resolution, a final definition in the end. But again, I really understand and appreciate and empathize that, yeah, this was not at the forefront of everyone's minds, but we did keep going in ways that we could. So I'm thankful for those who did still participate and help. But I'm also understanding of that, hey, we had bigger fish to fry, more important things. There was a global pandemic going on at the time, but we did keep going. And so for a fun history lesson, I'm going to show a couple of those, a little blast from the past. Let's see what some people were saying.
Would probably be something that not only assesses whether or not the student maintained their learning target or met the learning targets and their learning goals, but also whether the teacher provided adequate instruction in order to help them meet those goals.
Students learn.
And we are probably more focused on the teacher side of things, and that we need to be looking more at student-centered assessment. I think we're still
Begin with sharing success criteria, setting goals for themselves, working towards it, and then finally reflecting on the assessment.
Well, assessment is about,
to gather information, to see the students' performance. And the summative at the end of the unit is really important to see the mastery of the unit of the students.
So where would be like towards proficiency or movement towards mastery of a subject. And I think that it can be gathered in multiple ways. I don't think that there's one definitive way that it has to be gathered.
Right, we're almost at grandma's house. We can smell the turkey cooking. Yeah. We might get a flat tire on the way, but we can fix it.
Well,
teachers will eventually be a great thing for parents, because then I would say because I'm a parent, but parents generally would have a tool to see and monitor the progress of their children, which is something we lack right now. So I think for the future, this is a great step towards better communication between teachers and parents.
There were some points that we thought were missing as far as the assessment goes, yes, for the teacher, but also what about for the student self? We'll be able to go back and see what the students think about, our lessons, and what the students think about their own learning, if they need to go back and review more, and also for us as teachers, if we need to keep reviewing a subject or grammar, then we'll do that.
Create a kind of positive communication between the teachers and the students. Concerning the students, they will understand the weak points and that needs improvement, and they will also understand their strengths.
I think it was, it's going to be helpful once we narrow it down and figure out exactly what it says and what it means. Like Iman said, there was a lot of work that went into it and a lot of collaboration, and so it shows what the whole school and all the staff think. And I think
Circular rather than linear, because it's an ongoing process. And
assessment draft is really on the right track. We're all moving in the right direction. It's very important to have a shared set of common language that we can all use, so that students will move from grade to grade, the vertical alignment is in place, so that students get to hear us all saying and talking. As the student moves through the grades from grades 1 up through grade 5, they will be able to understand exactly the expectations and what is set out for them, because everyone is on the same page and they all should know what the expectations are, because the common language is used across the board.
Okay, thank you for watching a little bit of that. Kind of just a blast from the past, but I think it's important to add that contextual piece for this first conversation, because it really illustrates to me, helps me feel good about that, and recall and remember when I'm in a sore mood. Yeah, it happens that you all are wonderful people. We got an incredibly intelligent and bright crew here. You are actually extremely progressive. And the challenge then comes to when we have progressive ideas and thoughts, when it comes time to actually do something, what happens? And it's not just AISJ, it's kind of universal. Do we walk the talk? Do we put our money where our mouths are? In terms of, do we really do what we believe? And so as we break out these assessment definitions this school year and try to apply them to what we're doing or will do as we document work in Atlas, are we going to be able to do that? Are we going to be able to adjust, adapt, tweak, keep going with our good work if we're already doing it? Or do we kind of just at that moment just throw down the test, here you go? So I think it's an important part of the conversation to celebrate that we can do these things. As one person said, it is good to think about what we can do as a school if we all put our minds together. And we do have all these common assessments instead of everyone just making up stuff, doing their own thing. Okay. Yes, that assessment definition was finally published. It was published in May of that pandemic first year. And again, I think most people missed that it was published. We did talk about it a little bit online in terms of some guidance for what we're going to do with our priority standards. But again, people had bigger fish to fry, and I respect that. And I do appreciate those folks who did work on it. If you still want to see it, it's here on the Curriculum Office Google site. You can click here and see it. Okay, let's get going, straight to the chase. Okay, within that PDF, what is the assessment definition? Here it is up on the screen. We believe assessment is a process for students, families, and teachers. We believe valid assessments match the learning targets. That's kind of easy to understand. We believe equitable assessments are varied. Varied is a nice word. But today, let's zero in on these two sentences. Today, we're talking about formative assessments. So let's look at these two. We believe formative assessments, sorry, I need to go back. We believe formative assessments are for progress. We believe feedback is crucial to progress. So those two sentences are what we need to look at today because we're talking about formative assessments. Okay, so how do we take those two sentences, that definition, and transfer that into something that you need to put onto Atlas? How do we take those two sentences and transfer that into action? And this is another part of the equation, and I think it's an important part. And I have this one slide here because I want you to understand where we're coming from. The first picture in the upper left-hand corner, there's this book, Goldilocks map by Andrew Watson, and he talks about how to do research and take complicated ideas and put them into practice, how to decide what matters, what doesn't. And I love it when he talks about that boundary conditions always matter. And so when trying to understand how to take that assessment definition, those two sentences, and put it into practice for the elementary school, I think it's super important to consider what are the boundary conditions of the AISJ elementary school. What may work for another school or another division is not necessarily going to work for the learners and the teachers of the AISJ elementary school. Your boundary conditions matter, and we need to take those into account so we can make decisions that long-term are helpful and effective, but short-term don't damage the learning that's going on now too, because your time's valuable as well. The other kind of guiding light for me when having these conversations about what we need to do strategically and how to explain things to folks to get the job done is, and you might remember if you were here 2 years ago, maybe the first time you met me in the library, I think we were in the little chairs, I had commented on that I love the dynamic between these two words, complex versus complicated. Complex means it's got many parts, but it actually may be quite simple, kind of like a kid's puzzle. It's got a lot of parts, 20 puzzle pieces, but putting it together is pretty easy. That's complex. Complicated, on the other hand, yeah, that's challenging. That's tough. And so when trying to take the definition of assessment and put it into play, put it into practice for the elementary school, for all divisions, really trying to make it as uncomplicated as possible. Yes, there are levels of intelligence of conversation that we could have even more, and you're welcome to have those with me. But for today, for now, we need to make this as uncomplicated as possible. And I think there's this tyranny in terms of tyrannical complication, where people try and make it more complicated than it needs to be. So here is your uncomplicated version. Let's go for it. Okay. We believe equitable assessments are varied. We believe formative assessments are for progress. We believe feedback is crucial to progress. I think we need to make sure in an uncomplicated way, let's be clear on 5 things. We'll be using the word formal assessment, formal formative assessment. For today, to be uncomplicated, we will define formal as serious mid-unit checks. If you had a grade book, this would be graded. Informal, these would be less serious, more frequent checks, not graded. Yes, we can read more about these definitions. Here's a link to resources with a whole lot more. But for today, keep it uncomplicated. Formal, serious, graded. Informal, less serious, not graded. Okay. Now in elementary school, because you don't have official grade books, you have to use these terms graded, not graded, fluidly, and keep an open mind about that. Okay, varied. In simplest terms, varied means we use a lot of different kinds. Differentiation of assessment. For progress, this is really key. Are we using our formative assessments for progress? Do we use our formative assessments to help our learners do better? Or is it just some kind of like, I'm halfway through the material, I check it, I give a grade, and then I move on to the second half of the material? For our formative assessments to be for progress, you need to use the information to help the students do better. Do we use the information to help the students do better? That's something that we should talk about today. The final word that I want to highlight and make sure we're clear on is feedback. When we were writing our assessment definition, a lot of people thought this was really important. Feedback is crucial to progress. So think about it today in this school year. How do we give feedback to our students after our formative assessments? Do we give a formative assessment and say, here's your formative assessment back, you got an F, next? What do we do with that information to help them progress and do better? It's not one and done. In this resources folder, there's a whole lot of things, but one of them is this template. It's for feed forward, and it's kind of a funny name, but I like it. And it kind of explains that we should take it seriously in terms of giving feedback that helps the student progress and move forward, not just saying bad job. And I know, I'm sure none of you do that, but do we always really make a concerted, specific effort, structured effort to give students feedback so they will do better? Okay, so before we get into exactly what we're going to put in Atlas for formative assessments, let's talk about where it will go. Formative assessments will be uploaded or shared drive linked in stage 3. When you open Atlas and you open up a unit plan, you know, it's got stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So you scroll down to stage 3. And the first box in stage 3 is called activities and learning strategies. At the bottom of the box will be this blue thing you can tick on, and it says add an attachment. That is where you will upload or share drive link your formative assessments. You're not going to need to type in anything. into this box though, about formative assessments. I just want to point out that, yeah, we're putting them here in stage 3. We're not putting them in stage 2. I think this is cool. I think it's a good thing, and I think it's good of us to do this, because in that way we're declaring that formative assessments are for learning. They're even an as learning process. They're not a stage 2 cumulative evidence collection, a summative thing. And so it's important that we accentuate, we define, we are declarative that our formative assessments are actually learning activities. And so that's where we will put them. Okay, keep going. Okay, when you upload or share drive link them, they must have this file name format. Type -week title. For example, formal formative assessment about week 5. Yes, these are estimates, that's okay. Multiplication mid-module assessment. Or informal formative assessment about weeks 10 to 18 informational text pre-assessment. Oops, misspelled, I have to fix that. Feedback weeks 10 to 18 reading maps. This is the file format, okay? And yes, when we do our Atlas checkout, if it's not in this file format structure, I'll send it back and you'll need to fix it. So please, first time, get the file format, the name correct for your uploads or shared drive links. Okay, so minimum, these are mins, minimum. What is due in Atlas at the end of this, by the end of the school year? Okay. In K5 homerooms, in our reading and writing units, you need to upload formal formative assessments. Pre-writing for K5. K1, pre-letter sound IDs. 3-5, pre-reading assessments. K5 BAS and K5 spelling inventory. These can go there too. Now, what do I mean these can go there too? You can describe your BAS process on a doc. Okay. These would not be your summatives. Okay. Informal formative assessments for your reading and writing units. K5 conferring descriptions. So on a Google Doc, describe how you confer with the students. K5 running record description, or if there's a template you use. Okay. So again, this might be titled informal formative assessment weeks 3 to 10 K5 running record template. Or it might be titled informal formative assessment weeks 12 to 15 conferring description. Or it might be titled formal formative assessment week 10 pre-writing. Okay. K5 homerooms. In your math units, your formal formative assessments will be your mid-module assessments. So formal formative assessments week example 15 mid-module. Informal formative assessments for math, your exit tickets. So informal formative assessments week, let's say 20, dash exit ticket. FAQ, Paul, I do an exit ticket every day. Do I need to upload all of those? No. You can do an exemplar exit ticket. So informal formative assessment dash weeks 7 to 10 dash exemplar exit ticket. A good example that a new teacher looking at it could make their own. Okay. In your science and social studies units, minimum 1 formal formative assessment, minimum 1 document describing informal formative assessments. What are some other informal formative assessments that you use for science and social studies? Use a Google Doc, describe it. Okay, you want to write a paragraph about it, you want to use bullet format, either's fine. Litmus tests, could a new reader, a new teacher read it and understand? Okay, for every unit of all 4 core subjects, every unit, also 1 document describing how feedback is given. So this would be labeled informal formative assessment dash weeks, however long the unit is, 10 to 20, dash feedback. And describe how you give feedback to the students. This, out of all of these, this is the most interesting and the most challenging. This is your stretch. How do you give feedback to the students so it helps them progress? Paul, did I do a good job? Answer that question yourself first. Is the way that you give feedback helping your students progress? Does it? Or do you just give it back to them and say, this is what you got? This is our great opportunity. Maybe in 24, 25 or 25, 26, maybe that school year, when we're said and done and we're looking for the next thing to really do better at, this is our next growth opportunity. But for now, for this school year, just describe what you're doing and think about that. Does it really help the student do better? Okay, for the early childhood, per unit 3 formative assessments. See your early childhood coordinator for details, okay? For specials, per unit, minimum 1 formal formative assessment and 1 doc describing informal formative assessments and how feedback is given. It could be like half page, okay? Now, I just want to say this at the end. While talking about Atlas, here are some FAQs, okay? Please remember for science, if I check out this school year, your science units should be the new science units per our new resources, okay? Please remember in those new units on Atlas, if you are doing a lot of changing, the NGSS standards that you've ticked at the top of your Atlas map, those should be the DCIs. Okay, that's something we talked about last school year. Okay, here's an FAQ. What about social studies? We've started the review process. Should I make my maps what we're going to do in the future? Here's my answer. It's not required now. Updates would be required in the first year of adoption or implementation after our review process, which actually isn't until 2023, 24. However, if you are trialing some updates at a much faster pace, yes, you may update your Atlas now, but again, it's not required. Here's kind of the catch though. It says here in parentheses, Atlas should be, let's pretend it's next school year and it's orientation. Atlas should really communicate what will be done live and in person that school year. So if your trialing of something new for social studies is so massively different than what's in Atlas that it needs to be updated to be real, for what's really happening in 22-23, then yeah, it should be updated now. Okay? So it's kind of a case-by-case answer. If you want to meet with me and talk about it more, we can, and determine what your case is. But that's my general answer for those two FAQs. So again, your Atlas work is for EC and for specials there. And then on this screen, this is what we need to do for homeworks. Any questions, please ask me. I'll say, if you're at the point at the end where you're wondering, did we do a good job? I'd suggest two things. Number one, try one unit, shoot me an email. Hi, Paul, reading unit 4. We finished our formative assessment uploads. Could you check it out and make sure we did it right before we do more? That's perfect, do that. And then I'll give you feedback and then you'll move on like a rock star knowing what to do, okay? Another way, and another way that you can help answer that question, did we do a good job? You know, go back to these 3 key words from the definition. It's kind of subjective. Varied. So you have a lot of different kinds of formative assessments. Maybe your formals aren't so varied, but are your informals varied? For progress, are your formative assessments really for helping the students do better? Or is it more like an interim benchmark? We really want your formative assessments to be for progress. It could help with your interim benchmarking a little bit too, of course, but it should be for progress also. And finally, again, this is our big stretch. How do you give feedback? How do you give results to your students? Paul, it's my first year. I'm on Zoom and I give comments on the Seesaw. Okay. When we're live and in person, remember this Atlas is for when we're live and in person. How would you give feedback to your students? Now, if you're in a homeroom team, of course, you can talk to your homeroom team about it. How will you give feedback to your students when you're live and in person? Okay. If you're a specialist and you're the only one and you've only done online because it's your first year, well, imagine, predict. What do you think would be the ideal way to give feedback to your students when you can see them live and in person? And that's what you would write down. Again, any questions, please ask me. Golden rule, ask if you got a question. I love to help. That's why I'm here. It's what I love to do. Please ask me if you have any questions. It's a lot to take in. And a lot of things might be case by case specific. So please do reach out and ask. I can visit you, I can Zoom, we can talk about it on email, whatever works out best for you. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Bye-bye.